The Zootopia abortion comic. Okay, so, for those unfamiliar, like myself, Zootopia, I'm going to just read the little Wikipedia blurb here. Zootopia is a 2016 American animated buddy cop action comedy film produced by Walt Disney Animation Studios and released by Walt Disney Pictures. So, yeah, it's just basically a furry cop movie. It's got really good reviews. People seem to love this movie. So much so that there's a lot of fan work created of it, and one in particular that's become a bit infamous, and that is the Zootopia abortion comic, better known as I Will Survive, by the artist named Borba. This comic's known for stirring up a lot of controversy because of the controversial subject matter, abortion. I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to get into that. I don't think we should debate any of that. We're just going to review the comic as a single standalone story without the social connotations around it, okay? So, let's get right into the review. Okay, so before we begin, I want to let you know that I have not seen this movie. I think, however, that may actually make my review of this infamous webcomic a bit more unbiased. Also a bit funnier. So, Zootopia appears to have these two as main characters, Legoshi and Haru. Oh, I mean Nick and Judy. Side note, couldn't get into Season 2 of Beastars. Is the manga any good? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, just out of context clues, this fan comic takes place after the events of Zootopia. Nick and Judy have become a couple and are living together. They appear to have a pretty healthy relationship until the events of this comic. So, let's begin. The story begins in Judy and Nick's home in the early morning where Judy finds out she's pregnant. Judy, upon realizing this, frantically wakes Nick up. She makes it clear that it's a very serious matter. After going through his morning routine, Judy begins to tell Nick the news. The pacing of this is expertly done. Judy's expressions and body language really tell the readers that this is a Herculean task for Judy. A child is certainly a massive responsibility and something that shouldn't be taken lightly. Borba really gets this across, and you can get the vibe from the scene even if you remove the word balloons. At first, Nick thinks she's joking, but Judy reassures him that this is no joke. Nick is ecstatic to hear the news and looks forward to their child being born. But you can immediately tell just by Judy's facial expressions that they are not on the same page. Borba added some space between Nick's reaction and Judy telling him she wants an abortion in a masterful use of anticipation. It's good to let a scene breathe sometimes to get the characterization across. So she tells him she doesn't want the child in this really well done panel with a pure black vignette. The art will get its own section as always, but I just have to say that Borba is extremely skilled at his craft. The first thing you notice about this infamous webcomic is that the art is outstanding. I'm glad I added this comic to the roster of reviews as I have now found another superb artist, but we'll talk about art later. Back to the story review. Nick, who was jumping for joy a moment ago, is now completely mortified at the prospect of Judy getting an abortion. He wanted to be a father, and that comes across in his facial expressions and body language. Thus, an argument between the couple begins. At first, Nick hears Judy out. She explains that she didn't believe Nick could get her pregnant in the first place because they're from different species. But in the universe of Zootopia, apparently it's entirely possible.
It's entirely possible.
Okay, I'm not going to use that joke again. Maybe. Apparently, crossbreeding is extremely rare, so she believed it impossible, but here they are. She explains her fear of bearing a fox's child. There's a fear that because they're so different, the child might come out to be what she describes as a freak. There's a visualization of this potential child in a really cool panel, and I really want to see more of Borba's creature designs. But that's besides the point. Nick is uncertain this so-called freak child will actually come out the way Judy is visualizing. Judy also explains that as a rabbit, a fox's child might cause her problems in the process of the pregnancy. I mean, foxes in real life are enormous compared to rabbits, so she does have a point. But again, the Zootopia lore is not something I'm very familiar with. Nick is obviously not happy with her and proclaims that she never told him that she didn't want children, even if he was capable of getting her pregnant. Again, Borba is the master at body language. Judy also explains that a pregnancy might derail her career opportunities. She believes that bearing a child and the obvious maternal leave that comes with it will lower her rank in terms of police slated for promotion. She explains that she's meant to become a lieutenant soon and that maternal leave might take her off of the roster for promotion permanently. Nick doesn't think her career should matter more than her child, and Judy loses her temper. She's furious that Nick said that he thought he knew her, but he was wrong. She explains that he knew all along, that she did everything for her career. But he retorts by saying that she'd be willing to kill their child for it. This obviously pushes Judy over the edge in a double-page spread that brings to mind the Rickard slapping Griffith spread from Berserk. And if your manga makes me think about Berserk, you're doing something right. In tears, Judy explains that she went too far and they should reconcile, but Nick falls silent and begins to pack. Despite the outburst, Judy proclaims that her feelings for Nick have not changed and that she wants to stay together. Nick's final argument to get Judy to keep the child is asking her how she would feel if her mother aborted her. He says that Zootopia would be an awful place without her and that she's one of the few that were able to make a difference in this world. He explains that he wouldn't be the person he was without her and he'd still be living a meaningless life. Finally, he asks Judy to give the unborn child a chance to make a difference in the world the same way she did, but her mind was already made up. Before leaving, he asks Judy one last thing. He asks why she didn't keep it a secret and got an abortion behind his back. She explains that it wouldn't have been an honest thing to do and that she felt he had a right to know. Nick, with mixed emotions, opens the door for the last time, tears running down his face, and before leaving, Judy asks where he's going. Without turning around, he says, "Don't worry, I will survive." Crestfallen, Judy falls to her knees in tears as the story ends. Nothing lasts forever. Even an apparently everlasting love that has triumphed over the odds and many challenges may eventually come to an end. Wow. This comic, despite its controversial subject matter, was clearly crafted with love and care. Borba is a phenomenal artist and constructed this story with all the key elements of an engaging narrative. There's a conflict and resolution told throughout the course of 23 pages. Despite its short runtime, he really let the scene breathe. The pacing felt just right, not too fast or slow, and the illustrations of Nick and Judy's facial expressions and body language really sell it. Whatever your stance on the matter at hand is, really don't care. You can't deny this. As a comic alone, it's really good. Now, despite this being a work of fiction, when this was posted, it obviously started a whole big debate around abortion and reproductive rights. I'm not going to get into it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the alternate retelling of the story by Borba where Nick's just fine with Judy getting an abortion, as well as the sequel where Judy has become mayor and bumps into Nick to reminisce of what was and what never came to be. If you want a more in-depth look at this aspect of the story, Wang made a video about it where he mostly focuses on the story around the comic rather than the comic itself. I will link that in the card and in the description. On to the art. The art is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, just look at it. Look at it. As aforementioned, facial expressions and body language can be used to convey a narrative alone. Borba is in league with someone like Shuzo Oshimi, who I personally think is the master when it comes to silent storytelling in comics/manga. Speaking of manga, the art direction is clearly influenced by the grayscale and black and white style of manga, and it really helps set the tone and sell a rather tragic story of a loving couple separating. The perspective is shifting regularly and we aren't stuck in a static 3/4 view like some other webcomics. Control-Alt-Delete. Excuse me. The backgrounds are highly detailed and very consistent, nothing moves from panel to panel, and you really feel like you're in the scene watching this argument unfold. If you told me Borba had assistants helping him make this comic, I'd believe you. But I can't be sure of that. The characters are recognizable from the Zootopia movie, but Borba's style comes through as well. I used the Internet Archive to read this comic, and I must share this review with you. Oh my god, the way you drew Judy Hopps, oh my god, I'm edging, I'm gooning, it's flowing out, it's so sticky. It won't stop, I can't stop it. I can't help but explode every time I see Judy Hopps, oh my god. Yeah, I'm just going to move on from that. Just wanted to share that with you. The texture work is professional. I can really see the fur on these anthropomorphic animals. Screen tones are used appropriately and skillfully. My favorite panel is probably this one. I already mentioned this vignette earlier, but all the elements come together to reveal a turning point in the story, a big reveal. The dialogue is short and to the point, but the tears coming from Judy's eyes really reflect her internal struggle to decide between keeping or aborting the child. It's also apparent she can't even make eye contact with Nick when telling him this. I love this panel. This art is fantastic. So, I'm not sure how this was first displayed. I believe it was on DeviantArt because, of course. But when I went to look for it for this review, there were a few links. It took me a moment to find the Internet Archive version. I'm usually not a fan of the click to next page format. I like to separate chapters and scroll down, but with some space between the pages, not that infinite scroll that Webtoon popularized. It, however, works here considering it's such a short story. At least reading it on the Internet Archive, I'm assuming the controversy around the comic may have led Borba to take down the original upload. Again, link to that Wang video in the card in the description. I really enjoyed this one. Despite its dark subject matter, it was extremely well executed and both of the characters felt real. Kind of wild that this was a fan comic for Zootopia, of all things. Trying to separate the real-world social and political issues from the artist's work might be tough for a handful of people, but looking at this objectively, it's a good comic. Not necessarily something that I would have read by choice, but it came on my radar because of its infamy. The art is amazing, though. I really can't emphasize that enough. Overall, I give this an 8 out of 10. I think I'd probably give it a lower score if I was familiar with the source material, but my ignorance of it may have skated off any preconceived biases. My problems with it are its short length. I understand there are sequels, but I don't think Borba intended for a sequel before the controversy. There was also an instance of the dreaded wall of text, but somehow he managed to make it work in this context. I don't know, he pulled it off. Honestly, I like this comic. Not perfect and a bit of a touchy subject, but well done, nevertheless. I told you guys to recommend me bad ones, not good ones. Thank you, Borba, for making this. Alright, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it if you watch it all the way to the end. You know, it means a lot to me. Hit the like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. Check out the other videos on the channel. Leave a comment. What do you guys think about the Zootopia abortion comic? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And what should I review next? I'll see you next time.